r/nosleep. Posted by user, not necessarily. I was paid $100K to stay in a room full of mirrors. I had gotten kicked out of my job a month ago and was running really low on money. The lockdown gave me plenty of time to search through the web for a job. I was running low on options and was willing to do literally anything. I honestly would have started looking through the dark web if I hadn't seen the offer. It was your usual Facebook ad. Click here to earn $100,000 in a night. The rest of the ad was just plain white. I wouldn't have clicked on it under normal circumstances, but difficult times call for, stupid choices. As soon as I clicked the ad, I cringed internally at my desperation and waited for the page to load. After about a second of it loading, the thought of the page installing malware passed through my head, but it was killed quickly when the page finished loading. I scrolled through the page, absorbing as much information as I could. It was an official-looking page. Perceptions Research Organization, I think it was called. The page asking for volunteers for one of their research projects. It was pretty simple. Stay in a room full of mirrors for 24 hours and we'll observe you. They were offering such a huge sum for that. My gut told me just to move on and close the page, but I didn't. I looked through their past experiments. They had an interesting one that stood out to me. The sleep experiment, they called it. 6 volunteers spent 2 weeks without sleeping. The website said that they came out fine, and it even showed their testimonials. My trust increased in the organization, and I signed up for the offer. They had me fill in a survey and some other personal information. $100K for doing barely anything? It seemed like a dream. After a few days, I got emailed by the organization again. Congratulations, you have been selected as a volunteer to the mirror experiment. The experiment will take place on date at place. You have 2 days to respond to this email to confirm your participation. Here is more information about the experiment that you may read about before considering your participation. The experiment. You will be taken to a room full of mirrors and asked to stay there for the next 24 hours. You are not allowed any electronic or mechanical devices except the watch we provide you with until the experiment ends. The watch will outline how much time you have left until the end of the experiment. You will be provided an energy drink beforehand that will last you the 24 hours inside the room. You are not allowed to leave the room unless there is an emergency. There will be no furniture in the room, and the room will be entirely mirrors. We will observe your heart rate and other vitals through the watch provided. We will observe you through hidden cameras and microphones. The mirrors will be of all shapes and sizes, embedded into the walls, floors, and roofs in a mosaic. Terms and conditions. You are not to tell anyone else of this experiment. You are not allowed to carry location trackers with you, and you must hand over your phone to the facility staff. We hope to see you there. Pro. Perceptions Research Organization. The rules in the experiment seem fairly straightforward. The date is in 1 week. The place is at least an hour away from my house deep in the woods. I've decided to take part in the experiment. First, I made sure to schedule an email to my brother to be sent on the day after the experiment so he can follow up if I don't come home safely. I bought a GPS tracker and put it in the back of my mouth. I also brought a knife with me. I made sure to buy a cheap spare phone and hid it as well so I can contact someone in case something goes wrong. For my clothes, I got a hoodie and a scarf so I could cover my face up if needed. Finally, I grabbed a small makeup mirror I bought and put it in my pocket. I drove to the facility. The closer I got, the more my stomach filled with dread, and I'm starting to deeply regret my decision. I fought internally with my thoughts and nearly turned around halfway through the journey. My instincts were screaming for me to turn back, but I kept going. The facility was big. It was not the building you'd usually see this far into the woods. There was a massive parking lot at the front of the buildings. The gate guard let me through after I explained what I was here for, and I parked my car in the parking lot. The facility building had pristine white walls, and it was at least 3 stories from what I thought. The entrance was that of a big mall, and the carpets that were in the building were expensive. I walked into what I think was the reception area. The receptionist took some of my information, and then a woman in a lab coat came out of the elevator to take me to the prep area. She introduced herself as Dr. Wen and took me with her to level 4. First, I had to walk through a metal detector, and I immediately grew nervous as I slowly walked through it. They took all my things. They took my bag with books and stuff in it. They found my spare GPS tracker. They found my knife and phone. They let me take the pocket mirror I had. They didn't ask me anything about it, and didn't kick me out of the facility. They just gave me disappointed parent looks as they cleared me out. I had to change into different clothes. These clothes were skin tight, and I could barely move them up and down my body. They were like swimming clothes, except I was wearing 5 sizes smaller. The thing is, they were very loose and easy to wear. They got tighter when I wore them. My blood ran cold when they walked me into the room that I was supposed to spend 24 hours in. This was when my nightmare began. They gave me the energy drink, and I drank it. There was no point arguing with them. They were in power now. Then they closed the door and left me in a room of mirrors. The room was lined with various mirrors of all shapes and sizes. They all fit perfectly together into a mosaic. I couldn't tell where the light in the room was coming from. If I was guessing, there were probably lights hidden in the tiny gaps between the mirrors. The mirrors had no frames. The room was basically 99% mirror. They weren't lying about the toilet. There in the corner of the room, there was a toilet, but it was made of mirror-like reflective material. It matched the rest of the room. My scared reflection stared back at me from every single mirror. Suddenly the lighting got dimmer and I screamed. No one came to help me. My heart was thumping in my chest and I suddenly got an irrational thought. My reflections would hear me and get me. I tried to stand up, but I didn't even know what was up and down anymore. I stumbled around like a drunk person trying to find the door and open it. My reflections loomed closer and closer to me. I recoiled away from the walls when I suddenly saw one of my reflections reach out his hand towards me. Wait, no, I did that. The mirror is doing what it's supposed to, reflecting. I looked at the watch on my wrist they had given me, 23:58. Only 2 minutes, and I was already going crazy. Regret crushed me as I tried to stay sane in this stupid room. I'd only been in this place for 2 minutes, and I was already going insane. The lighting got a bit more dimmer, as if those sick freaks were playing around with me. I closed my eyes and tried to meditate. My heart rate slowed down and my body relaxed. As long as I wasn't seeing the mirrors, I would be fine. Regret washed over me as I thought about the last few days. I should not have volunteered for this stupid experiment. 100K seems like nothing right now. Chills ran up and down my spine as I suddenly became aware of something else. Light whispers. I couldn't make out what the raspy voice said, but it was unnerving. My veins turned to ice as I heard a whisper directly next to my left ear. I urged myself to keep my eyes closed, but I couldn't help myself. Suddenly, I got the bright idea of using the small hand mirror I brought with myself to see what was beside or behind me. I pulled it out and angled it. I can't describe what I saw without instantly getting tears in my eyes and shaking uncontrollably. I saw me standing behind me. His eyes were like black holes in his face. Red cracks spread throughout his face, and he opened his mouth. Blood spilled out, and he laughed hysterically. I cowered and threw my little hand mirror away. It shattered against all the other mirrors, and shards flew everywhere. I stared at the mirrors I had just broken and watched as they fell to the floor, causing a cacophony. Another mirror was pushed into place of the broken mirror that was behind it before. I screamed for a while, letting out all my despair. The glass shards lay there, reflecting millions of copies of me. I went to a corner of the room and huddled up there. I hear more and more whispers mocking me. Look at him. He's scared of us. The mirrors are coming. We won't let him leave. I could barely read the time on the watch because of my shaking hands. 23:45. This was impossible. Only 15 minutes had passed. The reality of it all crushed me, and my reflections laughed at me. I could not survive this. I suddenly felt the immense urge to pee, and so I slowly moved over to the reflective toilet. Words cannot describe how scared I was. This was probably the scariest toilet trip I have had to take. I desperately needed to get out of here, and so I started forming a plan. I first needed to find where the door was. My reflection mocked and jeered at me while I tried to get my bearing and find the door. Once I thought I had found it, I punched and kicked at the mirror. My reflection split into a million pieces. Suddenly, from across the room, I saw a dark figure in the mirror. The figure slowly moved from mirror to mirror, coming closer to me. I kicked and kicked at the wall and broke the mirrors, only to find more mirrors underneath. Just when I thought it was impossible, I kicked and a gap opened up. I pushed myself through the gap as the figure came closer. The sharp shards drew blood from my arms and cut the clothes I was wearing. It felt like I was getting 1,000 paper cuts at once. The idea of the figure getting me scared me more though, and I persevered. I finally made it out of the room, into the pristine white halls of the experiment facility. Emergency alarms blared and people started running towards me. I grabbed a particularly large shard of glass with one bloody hand. I gripped it so tight it probably got embedded into me. I slashed at the people trying to restrain me with animal strength. Blood pulsed through my temples as I navigated my way through the large building. I came across a window and I kicked it. Luckily it was on the first story, and I made the jump. Through my peripheral vision I saw men with guns coming in. Bullets whizzed past me as I jumped. I didn't land gracefully. I landed awkwardly on my knee and I heard a crack. Ugly, sharp pain filled my knee as I struggled to get up. My vision swam as I got into my car. It was at that moment that I realized that I had left my car keys back at the facility. I watched as people in lab coats and security personnel walked towards me. They walked slowly, knowing I wouldn't be able to run away from them. The reflection of me in my car's side mirror laughed at me. That was the last thing I heard as it all went black. I woke up in my bed at home. I cried in happiness. It was all just a dream. Then I saw the bandages all over my body and the cast over my knee. I looked around my house and everything was in the same place as before. None of my belongings were missing. Then I saw the mirror. My reflection was me, except I was riddled with cuts and bruises. Blood dripped from my skin-tight lab clothes, and behind me was the room of mirrors. I screamed and I kicked the mirror. The mirror cracked, but the image remained. I kicked and kicked the mirror until it was split into 1,000,000 shards, but the image remained on each of them. I've learned to live with the mirrors now. I removed all the mirrors from my house. Any reflective surface has me worked up. I can no longer stand this. No one ever comes to my house these days. I can't call anyone with my phone. I've tried going outside of my house, but people don't seem to notice me. My only connection to you guys is this phone with its reflective surface, constantly reminding me of the mirror room. Sometimes, if I look close enough, I can still see the digital watch they gave me on my wrist. 15:01. Sometimes I wonder if I ever made it out of there.